50,000 years. That's how long it had been since the last human voice was heard across the stars. The Terran Empire, the once mythic civilization that had burned across the galaxy like a storm of suns, was gone. Their cities had turned to dust. Their fleets had vanished into cosmic silence. Their name lived on only an alien memory, a mixture of awe, fear, and whispered curses spoken by those who still remembered the wars that had ended entire constellations. The galaxy had moved on. Empires rose, fell, and rose again in the ashes humanity left behind. And through it all, the legend of the Terrans persisted. The species had defied gods, rewritten physics, and finally destroyed themselves in a final, blinding act of defiance. Now, the Veran Exploratory Council had come to reclaim what was once forbidden space, the Sol System, the mythic birthplace of humanity. Their flagship, the VSS Keltara, emerged from warp at the edge of the ancient Sol boundary, its hull reflecting the pale light of distant suns. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward the forward viewports, expecting to see the soft golden glow of a G-type star. Instead, there was nothing. Where the Sol star should have burned, there was only darkness. No light, no planetary silhouettes, no radiation signature. Just an absence, a perfect, unnatural void that swallowed every sensor ping and spat static in return. Captain Arthur Vall, a veteran of a dozen frontier wars, stood rigid on command deck, his tendrils curling with unease. "Confirm coordinates," he ordered. The NAV officer's voice trembled. "Confirmed, sir. Galactic reference grid matches perfectly. This is Sol's position." The bridge fell silent. Even the hum of the Keltara's engines seemed distant now. "Try again," the captain whispered. Scanners swept. Quantum beacons pulsed. Gravitational sensors probed. But no matter what they tried, the readings came back the same, a hole in reality. Not a natural phenomenon, not a collapsed star. This was something deliberate. A scar, a choice. R.H. Thor, second in command, a cautious scholar named Drail the Sen, leaned forward. "I've read old human records, legends of their final days. They spoke of something called Project Exodus." R.H. Thor frowned. "Superstition. A myth. Perhaps. But the myths say they plan to take their world with them." The captain turned. "Take it? Where?" Drail looked into the black nothingness that should have been Sol. "Somewhere we cannot follow." Moments later, a faint pulse flickered across the sensor grid. A heartbeat of light buried deep within the void. The crew froze. The signal was rhythmic, structured, almost deliberate. "Is it artificial?" "Yes, sir. It's a beacon." They isolated the transmission, amplified it, and ran it through a dozen translation matrices. At first it was garbled, half static, half whisper, but as the data decrypted, the words began to take shape, slow, deliberate, cold. "We are not gone. You are simply not ready to see US." Every being on the bridge froze. The words hung in the air like a blade. Who sent that?" one ensign whispered. Drail swallowed hard. "The frequency modulation, it's not electromagnetic. It's temporal. The signal's coming from 50,000 years ago, and now..." The crew stared at each other in mute disbelief. "Captain," another voice said shakily, "we're detecting faint gravitational harmonics, like the system itself is breathing." R.H. Thor's mandibles twitched. "Breathing?" "Yes, sir. The distortion expands and contracts on a cycle every 60 seconds, like a heartbeat." Then, for just an instant, the void shimmered, and all across the Keltara's bridge, alarm screamed. Every star in the nearby sector flickered. Space warped, twisted, and for a fraction of a second, they saw something. The faint outline of a blue planet, wrapped in clouds and orbiting a golden star, surrounded by ghostly rings of light. Earth. Then it was gone. The void snapped shut, and silence returned. R.H. Thor sank into his command chair, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mark this system as restricted. No further approach. No scans. But, Captain, no debates. I've seen wars begin with less." Drail's voice was quiet, almost reverent. "Do you think they're still there?" R.H. Thor didn't answer. He turned his gaze toward the darkness where Sol should have been. Something about it, the way it watched them, felt wrong. Alive, a presence older than the stars themselves. Finally, the captain spoke. "They were human," he said softly. "That means they never truly die. They just wait for the rest of us to catch up." And far within the black sphere that once held Earth and its sun, something pulsed again, faint, deliberate, almost like laughter. The return to the Sol sector should have been a triumph, a historical expedition marking the reclamation of lost space. Instead, it became a funeral procession without a corpse. News of the vanished system spread across the galactic networks like wildfire. Every empire, syndicate, and scholar species sent their own probes, desperate to verify the impossible. All reported the same conclusion. Sol no longer existed. Yet every scan of the region revealed faint gravitational residue, like the lingering footprint of a world that had simply stepped away. In the grand archives of Tethys Prime, historians reopened files sealed for millennia, the final days of the Terran Empire. Records told of desperate experiments, half-crazed scientists, and a last message from Earth's high command. If the stars abandon us, then we shall abandon the stars. At the time, the alien nations had laughed. They thought it was human arrogance to the end. Now, 50 millennia later, the laughter had stopped. The Varen Exploratory Council convened emergency meetings. The disappearance of an entire star system was not merely a scientific anomaly. It was a cosmic threat. Some claimed it was a weapon. Others whispered that humanity had ascended, that they had found a way to walk between universes. Drail the Sen, the same scientist who'd been aboard the Keltara, became the leading voice of the investigation. He poured through ancient data vaults, reconstructing Terran language files, energy patterns, and starship designs. One night, deep within the archives, he found a fragment, an encrypted Terran transmission, dated to humanity's final year. It was heavily corrupted, half burned by radiation, but one line remained clear. Exodus Protocol. Phase Alpha. Synchronized planetary core frequencies. Drail froze. That wasn't just an evacuation. That was a translocation. They hadn't fled to another planet. They had moved their entire system. If true, then humanity had achieved what every empire only theorized, the ability to shift not just ships, but entire celestial bodies through folded space-time. But if they could do that, where had they gone? To find out, the Council authorized an unprecedented mission, Operation Memory, a sweep of every former human colony, ruin, or war zone across the galaxy. Teams fanned out into forgotten sectors. On Mars, they found a hollow world, not lifeless, but deliberately emptied. Entire strata of rock had been sliced away with surgical precision. Deep within the crust, glowing veins of unknown material pulsed faintly, like arteries feeding something unseen. On Europa, they found symbols, enormous geometric carvings visible only from orbit, each forming part of a massive spiral. The spiral's arms all pointed toward the coordinates of the missing Sol system. And on an asteroid drifting near what had once been the colony of Kepler, 442b, they found it, the mark of humanity, a perfect sigil carved into obsidian, a human handprint encased in a circle, surrounded by a phrase written in archaic Terran English. "We are not extinct. We are evolving." Drail stared at the symbol in silence for hours. It was impossible. Every scientific law rebelled against it. Yet here it was, proof that humanity's disappearance was no accident. It was a decision. Weeks later, something strange began to happen across multiple sectors. Ships passing near old human territories started receiving signals, bursts of static that, when filtered through spectral analysis, revealed sound. Music, not alien tones or coded pulses, but ancient human melodies, piano, violin, choral voices. Songs older than any living species. They were not transmitted through radio waves, but through gravitational harmonics, as though the universe itself was remembering the sound of humanity. And sometimes, amid the melodies, voices could be heard, soft, layered, haunting. Not words, but whispers. Some claimed they said awake. Others swore they heard soon. The Council tried to suppress the reports, but fear spread faster than truth. Priests called it resurrection. Militaries called it psychological warfare. Scholars called it the echo phenomenon. Drayle called it something else entirely. The prelude, he whispered, because deep inside his research files, one pattern repeated. Across every artifact, every transmission, every carved spiral. The countdown, a slow, rhythmic sequence embedded in every data trace, every energy signature, as though something vast was charging, aligning itself through time and space. When he plotted the pattern across the galactic map, it pointed to one place, the empty void where Sol once was. The Varen Council debated evacuation, but curiosity, that ancient, lethal curiosity that had doomed so many species, won again. Dozens of fleets were sent to border the distortion, their ships like fireflies before a storm. They built relay buoys, observatories, and research stations, all staring into the same darkness, all waiting for a sign. They didn't have to wait long. One by one, their instruments began detecting a low-frequency pulse, deep, steady, and growing stronger by the hour. Drayle recognized it instantly. It wasn't a random vibration. It was a heartbeat, and when he synchronized the pulse to the data from the ancient music echoes, the result was undeniable. The rhythm matched. The signal wasn't random. It wasn't natural. It was human. The scientists stared at the readings in silence, their throats dry, their minds racing. 50,000 years after their fall, humanity was stirring. At first, it was nothing more than a tremor, a ripple of distortion that barely registered on the instruments of the Varen monitoring fleet. But as hours turned into days, the pulse grew stronger, deeper, more deliberate. Every minute, the void where Sol once existed throbbed with invisible energy, a bass note reverberating through space-time itself. No natural force moved with such precision. No dying star beat with such rhythm. It was alive. Drayle of the Sen watched the data unfold from his command observatory aboard the Keltara, now permanently stationed at the border of the anomaly. His eyes glowed with reflected readouts as the waveform stabilized into a pattern too precise to be chance. "Captain Otter," he said quietly, "it's communicating." The captain's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "You're saying the void is speaking?" Drayle nodded. "And it's using physics as language. Each pulse adjusts the gravitational constant just slightly, the same way Terran engineers once used quantum vibrations to encode speech in subspace relays. This is the transmission." A low murmur filled the bridge. They amplified the waveform, and then from the speakers came sound, not the hiss of static, but a tone, a deep, resonant hum that trembled through the bones of every being aboard. It wasn't painful, but it carried weight, a sense of presence, like standing before something immeasurably vast. Then came the voice. "We told you not to follow." The words were clear, perfectly translated by no machine. They appeared directly inside every listener's consciousness, in their native languages, but felt rather than heard. The bridge went silent. R.H. Thor gripped the railing. "Identify source." "Unknown," the communications officer stammered. "It's everywhere." The message originated from inside the anomaly, but the frequency is bouncing across subspace layers simultaneously. It's rewriting our translation fields as it speaks. "You stare into the dark and call it empty," the voice continued. "You do not see because you have not learned to look. We watch you build empires on our bones. We watch you name your fleets after our dead. We watch you forget who taught you the stars." R.H. Thor's second officer whispered, "It's them." Drayle could barely breathe. "Humanity." The voice shifted, no longer singular, but chorus of millions, speaking in perfect unity. "We left your galaxy because it could no longer contain us. We transcended the cage you call reality, but you could not leave well enough alone. You sought to plunder our silence. Now you will remember why we were feared." Before anyone could respond, the darkness in the viewport moved. The anomaly rippled outward, and space itself bent like liquid. Stars in the distance distorted, curving around an invisible mass. Then, with a surge of light, something emerged. A colossal structure, kilometers wide, glowing with spectral light. Its surface was neither metal nor stone, but a shifting tapestry of matter and energy. woven together in impossible harmony. It looked almost biological. Thousands of smaller objects followed, vessels, sleek and angular, shaped like ancient human warships, yet made of luminous substance. They did not move through space. They warped through it, folding reality around themselves with each step. One of them appeared directly before the Keltara, blotting out the stars. The crew froze as its surface shimmered with symbols, words, images, fragments of human history flashing in brilliant light. Then a projection formed before them, a figure of pure energy, shaped like a human silhouette. No face, no gender, just a radiant outline. "Who are you?" Arithor demanded, forcing authority into his voice. The figure tilted its head. "We are what remains. We are what became. We are humanity ascendant." The captain swallowed hard. What happened to Earth? The figure raised a luminous hand, and the void behind it parted like a curtain. Beyond, the fleet saw glimpses, flashes of oceans, mountains, cities of light suspended in clouds. The blue planet still existed, but it was wrapped in layers of energy, its surface no longer bound by physical law. Earth was no longer a planet. It was a living world machine. "Our world awakened as we did," the voice said. "Matter was never our prison. Time was. We freed ourselves." The projection's tone shifted, almost mournful. "But freedom has a cost. We remember what you did to us. The sieges, the purges, the great betrayal. Yet vengeance is beneath us now. You cannot harm us, nor understand us." The figure stepped closer, its light brushing across the bridge walls like the touch of a star. "You have one task. Tell your galaxy, humanity is awake." The projection vanished. For several heartbeats, no one moved. Then alarm screamed, every sensor lighting up with gravitational spikes. The anomaly was expanding again, rapidly. Ships across the sector powered up their drives, but the void pulsed once more, a wave of invisible force that rippled through the fleets. When it passed, systems went dead. Engines died. Communications fell silent. The last image Drayle saw on his monitors before everything went black was the anomaly opening like an eye, and in its center, the blue glow of Earth shining brighter than a star. The galaxy burned with light. Not fire, not war, but awakening. Every communications array, every long-range sensor, every neural link across the known universe flickered alive. The same signal, that same impossible pulse from Sol, thundered through the void, now amplified across time and space. And everywhere it reached, the stars began to change. Old suns brightened. Dead worlds shimmered with atmosphere. Ruined colonies, long since silent, blinked with energy readings for the first time in 50,000 years. Humanity had not merely returned. They were rewriting the galaxy. The Varen Council sat in silence, watching the live feeds from across 100 sectors. Their brightest minds could not explain what they were seeing. Terraforming storms sweeping across worlds in minutes. Space-time folding into intricate patterns. Long-dead Terran stations lighting up like lanterns in the dark. Drayle of the Sen stood before the council, his eyes hollow, his voice trembling. "It's not an invasion," he said. "It's restoration." "Restoration?" one of the alien delegates hissed. "You call this the birth of stars restoration? They are rewriting the laws of physics." Drayle nodded slowly. "Yes, they're fixing them." At first, none understood. Then the feeds from the outer colonies showed it clearly. Human energy constructs descending on broken planets, weaving luminous grids into their crust, restoring oceans, regrowing forests, and seeding the air with breathable life. But with every act of creation came something else. Erasure. Whole fleets vanished, not destroyed, but removed. Entire armadas that dared to approach the anomalies simply disappeared from the records, wiped from databanks, forgotten even by their own species, as if rewritten out of history itself. The message that followed was clear. Balance must be restored. And so, the balance began. In the core worlds, panic erupted. The Zal Dominion tried to strike first. They assembled their greatest fleet, 5,000 dreadnoughts, armed with gravity lances and dark matter bombs, and launched straight for the Sol sector. They never arrived. Midway through their jump, every ship's navigation system displayed the same haunting message. Permission denied. Then, in the blink of an eye, the fleet was gone. No wreckage, no energy trace, only silence. And then, minutes later, their systems returned, but not in the same place. The entire Dominion Armada had been relocated to a starless void, light years beyond a galactic rim. A single human voice echoed through their comms. You still think in borders. We do not. The Dominion collapsed within weeks. Meanwhile, the other species began to witness miracles. On the long-dead world of Keros 3, rivers of molten glass cooled into crystal seas. On the shattered moons of Veltrain, cities rebuilt themselves from nanometric dust. On worlds that had been lost for eons, human descendants began to emerge. Pale figures of light and shadow, bearing the DNA of ancient Terrans, reborn to machines and energy fields alike. They called themselves the Restored, the Children of Earth, and they spread across the galaxy carrying a single message. The mother world breathes again. And at the center of it all, in the place where the void once devoured light, soul returned. It began as a shimmer, a distortion of darkness peeling away like mist. Then came the light, a radiance so bright that even distant systems dimmed by comparison. And there it was, Earth, no longer a fragile blue marble, but a living, glowing titan. Her surface was veiled in silver lattices of energy, her continents wreathed in aurora-like storms of brilliance. Her moon orbited close, now encased in structures that pulsed like a heartbeat. Orbiting the planet was a fleet, millions of ships, human in design, yet forged of light and gravity itself. Each vessel radiated power beyond comprehension. They formed constellations, organized, deliberate, as if guarding something sacred. Then the message came, not through comms, not through data, but through reality itself. Every mind, across every system, heard it as one. We were never gone. We simply moved beyond your understanding. You measured our fall by your clocks. We counted our rise in eons. Now we will heal what you broke. The stars pulsed in response, each one flickering in sync with Earth's glow. The entire Milky Way seemed to hum, a resonance so deep it vibrated to the fabric of existence. R.A. Thorval, old and trembling, watched from the bridge of his scarred ship. Drail, he whispered, do you think they forgive us? Drail didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the light, consuming the horizon. Forgiveness is a human word, he said quietly. This is something greater. And as he spoke, the human fleet moved, not in war, but in harmony, spreading beams of pure energy across the stars, linking world to world in a network of light. Time, gravity, and matter aligned. The galaxy, long broken by greed and conflict, was being rewritten. The last transmission from Earth rippled across all creation. You thought we fell, but we were only learning how to stand again. We are humanity ascendant. Then the signal faded into silence, and above the reborn Earth, the dawn rose again, brighter, eternal, unstoppable. The galaxy had entered a new age, not an age ruled by humanity, but one reborn in their image. The age of ascension had begun.